Hey everyone, thank you for joining the event today. This is Nick. I'm on the user ready side. Today we are doing a webinar on Snowflake and 0 to 60 or 0 to Snowflake in 60 minutes. Thank you for joining. Obviously, over the next 60 minutes, we're going to be talking about Snowflake. Our two presenters are Raj and Jajati from the user ready side. A little bit about us. We are an organization that's focused on strategy and data from a holistic sense. As you guys listen in over the next 60 minutes, we'll be talking about user adoption, user performance, and user experience for Snowflake, but we also work with several different tools and several different leaders in the industry. That's enough about me. I'm going to pass it over to Rajesh. He'll do a nice introduction and then get you guys on the way to learn a little bit about Snowflake. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for that quick introduction. So, welcome everyone again for this webinar of Snowflake. Right, as a quick introduction by Nick, I work in. I myself Rajesh Hegde, Raj, work in user ready from the last 3.5 years as a practice director, and I take care of pretty much everything related to consulting, training, and these webinars around Tableau, Snowflake, any other data and cloud requirements. And I have Jajati also with me, who's a practice head as well. Right. Let us move forward a bit. Jajati, can you please introduce yourself? Jajati. All right.
Hi, my name is Jajati Pasupalak. I'm a practice head for the user ready for data warehousing practice. And I come with the background of 22 years of data analytics, consulting, and architecture experience. Happy to be here to help you guys anyway for building new age data warehousing applications. If you have any questions, please hold your questions until the Q&A session, and Rajesh would be taking you through the next phase of this webinar.
Thank you. Thanks, Jajati. So for the quick walkthrough for the audience, right, of the webinar tool itself. So if you intend to ask any question, by default, all of you are muted, so you'll not be able to speak out. But you can send us a question in the text form within the question pane of the tool. So please use them. So if the questions are relevant to the specific topic, then we will try to address them at that point itself. Otherwise, we will wait till the end of the session where we will have last 5 to 10 minutes as a Q&A, where we'll be able to address most of the questions, right? All right. So let's jump in, right? So we do conduct the webinars about Tableau extensions for pixel perfect reporting, analytical community portal, and that is mainly for user adoption. And we have a BI meets AI theme where we conduct lots of webinars around those themes. Then we also enable Tableau embedded analytics for the enterprises, right? Then we also have AI ML related initiative around Tableau adoption bot environment, which we call it as TABI, and the cloud BI using Tableau and Snowflake, and the one which we are now listening into Snowflake, 0 to Snowflake in 60 minutes, right? So all we have built or used database or data warehouse so far. Pretty much everyone who talked about data in any form, whether it's an Excel file or a CSV file or any other flat file, or a matured data warehouse implementation with Oracle Teradata or any other data warehouse platform, we have used them one or the other way, right? So now, looking at Snowflake, right? Snowflake, if we look at the list of customers so far, Snowflake has 1,500 plus customers. Some of the major names, Fortune 500 organizations, are already Snowflake customers. Then what is Snowflake all about, right? It's a buzzword in the market with respect to data warehouse in the new generation. So the Snowflake solution architecture for data-driven decisions, right? So we have all sorts of data on the left-hand side. So we can see all our data in the form of RDBMS, or it could be in the form of some of the flat files, or it could be a compressed data files from big data platforms, or it could be even streaming data from some of your IoT devices, or it could be an Excel file, right? Any of these form of data will be pushed into Snowflake as a data loading strategy. And in the Snowflake, we can transform them and then put it into respective tables or materialized views or views within the Snowflake. And that can be then consumed in the downstream applications like dashboards or any of your analysis platforms like Tableau or Power BI or any other application of your choice, right? So what is the uh, intention of having Snowflake and what is the advantage of having the Snowflake, right? So today's demand is enormous. So we get data from lot of sources. So managing and the challenges for us today is mitigating the risk of scalability, reducing the cost, and improving the decision-making process seamless, right? So those are the key points we are looking at when we implement some solutions in place. So efficiencies with this architecture will be concurrency. So we are able to address the issue of concurrency, right? With the legacy databases or data warehouses like Oracle, Teradata, and other things. If you want to scale it up or scale it out, then there is a downtime, right? For any concurrency related requirement, we will have to scale it out. Then there is a downtime. Then from the data analytical standpoint, so simply adding another node is not an easy option in any of those, right? From the resiliency standpoint, replication across geographies. So in the sense, because Snowflake is a software as a service hosted on a public cloud like Azure and AWS, right? So built-in resiliency is already there because everything of your data and everything of your compute are replicated across multiple geographical regions or availability zones. And the security is also part of the product, right? So you can implement row level security, column level security, or IP based securities and VPC based securities and those things, right? So those are also part of the product. So Snowflake is addressing our concurrency issues or scalability issues, resilience, and the security requirements as well. Okay, moving forward, please feel free to put in your questions as and when you think that there is a question or something which needs to be explained. So feel free to put in your questions. Now, what does it support, right? How does it support the thing? Now Snowflake supports all your standard SQLs. It's ANSI SQL compliant, right? So it supports all the DDLs and DMLs from most of the tools. So if you have Oracle data warehouse or a SQL data warehouse, you can pretty much copy all your SQLs from there, DDLs maybe for creating the tables or any other objects within database of Snowflake, and you can execute that within Snowflake UI, or it could be different other ways through the connectivity. It can even be executed through Python scripts or through some JavaScript stuff from Node.js piece, or it could be through Spark connector, or it could be a standard connectivity like ODBC or JDBC, right? So anything related to DDL, DML can be simply copy pasted and executed on Snowflake. Then from the availability standpoint, since it is a hosted environment, software as a service on public cloud like AWS and Azure, so availability is inherited there, right? We talk in AWS and Azure, we talk about availability of 99.59 of decimal point. So 99.59. That is approximately around, downtime could be approximately around 1.8 minutes when we translate that in terms of minutes, it could be around 1.8 minutes. But that is hardly visible there because we have all sort of cross-geographical or region replications. Hence, we don't even see that. So it is pretty much like 100% available. And the security standpoint, so it has an automated encryption, whether objects or data is in transit or at rest, everything is encrypted up to 256-bit AES encryption. Okay, we also have an ability to use our own encryption keys to encrypt our data. We don't have to leave it to Snowflake to use the default key. We can encrypt by ourselves using our own custom keys, right? It also supports third-party encryptions like SOC. It also has a HIPAA compliant. It has a DSS compliant. So all the advanced compliance requirements from different agencies it inherits. So it has all those supports, and it supports a broad ecosystem, right? You can connect from any tool, any application, and you can push the data through any tool as well. Most of the ETL tools nowadays available have Snowflake connector built in now. So you can use that and do the bulk loading of data into Snowflake in an efficient way. All right. So moving forward, right? How does Snowflake do all these things behind the scene, right? So if you look at my screen, we have architecture diagram where it's a layered architecture, right? If you start from the bottom, so we have a database storage where all the data is getting stored, and we have a separate layer which is virtual warehouse processing or a query computing, right? That is a separate layer. So the interesting thing here is that we have in Snowflake, we have separated database storage and query processing tier. So if we compare this to any other database right now available, everything is combined together. So it's kind of a shared nothing architecture, right? Most of the databases or data warehouses are shared nothing architecture, where you will have your query processing and database sitting next to each other, and only the specific processing or a CPU will be able to get the data out of that particular storage tier. So, but in Snowflake, both are separated. That means I can have a number of warehouses or a query processing tier connecting to any data within my Snowflake account, right? So that's quite feasible. So now for the storage purpose, Snowflake uses on Amazon S3 buckets and on Azure blob storage. So that is the underlying technology which Snowflake uses for storing your data. So now, do we need a separate account in AWS or Azure if you want to have a Snowflake account? The answer is no, because Snowflake is going to manage all our resources on the cloud for us. So internally, right? We will not have exclusive access to any of these resources within our account. So everything is managed by Snowflake. Okay. So now within S3 bucket or Azure blobs storage, right? Within Snowflake, then we'll be creating databases and schemas, and within that tables, views, etc. And the charging goes with respect to per TB per month, approximately around $20 to $30, right? That depends on the type of the account we buy, and then the support type and all those things. But approximately it would cost around $30 a month per TB, right? The next layer is a virtual warehouse or a query compute layer, right? That uses on AWS EC2 instances or on Azure virtual machines. So depending on the t-shirt size of the warehouse, right, our query execution time depends. So if the t-shirt size is small, then the query execution could be a little longer. And if we increase the t-shirt size, then the same query can get executed within fraction of the time, right? Then this query computing is completely with respect to DML query execution. So execution tier is going to use DML to be used for DML query execution, like copying the data into the tables, or selecting the data from, or selecting the rows from a specific table or a view, or upsert, insert, or delete, any such things, right? That's what the DML query uses. And the charging is a per second billing on the query compute, and approximately it is going to be $3 per hour, right? Um, that is again dependent on your type of an account. Like standard, we have 4 types of account in Snowflake: a standard account, premier account, enterprise account, and the 4th one is enterprise account with sensitive data. And there is also a special account as a 5th type, that is VPS, that is virtual private Snowflake. So if your data is so sensitive and your compliance is so strict, then you can go ahead and buy your uh, VPS, virtual private Snowflake account. It is just like a VPC in AWS term, right? You will have your own virtual private network for yourself, and then that's where all your data gets hosted. Okay, so to access or to use this query compute tier and then the storage tier, we have a tier called cloud services, which is used for optimization of your queries or infrastructure management, then the security part of it, and then the metadata management and authentication. All of these are taken care at the cloud services layer, and that is pretty much a web layer, which we'll see once we start a demo. Okay, so all these 3 layers, as we discussed earlier, is replicated across multiple availability zones and multiple regions of Snowflake. So that means we will never have a downtime. Kind of maybe some functionality will have some issues while there is some changes going on with respect to the product, but otherwise, as a product, we will hardly have any downtime, right? Because of the high available infrastructure behind the scene. So there is always a replication of all these 3 layers. That means everything is intact for us. Now, how do we access Snowflake? We can access using Spark connectors or SQL, SnowSQL. SnowSQL is a SQL client, okay, CLI, just like PL SQL for Oracle or T SQL for Microsoft SQL Server. SnowSQL is a command line tool for connecting to SnowSQL and execute the SQL queries. And then we have Node.js connector, we have a Python connector for programmatic approaches, and we have a classic connectors like ODBC and JDBC for all other downstream application requirement. Then we also have a web UI where we can execute our queries and manage our Snowflake account, like creation of the users or users and roles, or tables or databases or virtual warehouses. All those can be created even through the web UI as well. And those can also be created through any of these means, right? Because everything in Snowflake is nothing but a SQL. Everything is execution of a SQL. So everything can be created there. And those can also be created using web UI if it is not a repetitive task, right? If it is a repetitive task, then we are good off doing some automation using some of the scripting methodologies. Okay. Please feel free to put in the questions. So if any question is relevant to the topic which I'm talking about, I'll try to explain those or answer those questions then and there. Otherwise, we'll keep the questions towards the end of the session. Okay. Those who joined webinar after we started off, welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining in. Okay. So now from the source standpoint, right? So Snowflake supports pretty much all the structured data and also semi-structured data. So when we say structured data, anything is in the table form, right? Maybe in any of your existing homegrown databases, or maybe some databases located anywhere in your organization or an enterprise, like some instances of MySQL, some instances of Postgres or SQL Server or Oracle or Teradata, any of those, and also a semi-structured data. So semi-structured data could be your JSON files or XML files or Avro, ORC, Parquet files, which are all, most of these are some of the compressed data files. So Avro, ORC, Parquet are the big data outputs or compressed data files from big data platforms, and CSV is a structured data file, right? So these are the source files which are supported by Snowflake. And once you load it into Snowflake, okay, because in the newer data warehouse world, we talk about ELT, right? It is no more a ETL process, because we don't want to do a row level operation on every data we have and then push it into Snowflake. Maybe we don't want to do that. So instead, we will do a extract from these files or any of the other underlying or our source system and load the data into Snowflake as is without any transformation. That means extracting and loading happens. And then once the data is loaded, then you apply your transformations to based on the business requirement. You can apply transformations in DB transformations, and then get that into materialized views or set of different tables, or in the form of view or any such things, right? So that is the best way. So that means the latest trend or the way we do it is using ELT, right? It is no more ETL approach. It's a ELT approach: extracting, loading data, and then transforming data in DB transformation, using in DB transformation capabilities using Python or Node.js or SQL UDFs or Node.js UDFs and things like that. So that makes it more efficient. Okay. That. So how do we start Snowflake? Right. We have all the data sources on the left. Then we create a data lake by creating some S3 buckets or Microsoft blobs where we can upload these source of data into those. That can be our data lake. And then that can also be our staging area. And then from there, we will push the data into a data warehouse or set of tables within our Snowflake database. Can be in the normalized form, can be in the denormalized form. So we'll push the data in there. And then we create data marts or for the specific usage, right? Maybe you have a marketing department or sales department or finance department or HR department. You can have specific data marts built for a specific business use by applying a transformation from your data warehouse, right? So then it can be exposed to underlying reporting applications. Okay, so that's what happens. So now you can see that was the legacy, and this is the new generation in Snowflake. Everything happens in Snowflake now, right? So that is the change or a shift between the flows to the existing data warehouses and Snowflake. Okay, so by understanding these things, let us jump into a quick demo to see how Snowflake actually works. Right, we understood a part of the theory, that what is an architecture and how it takes care of the requirements, advanced requirement of analytics and storing data. Now let us have a quick look at the demo itself. So to start with, I want to log into Snowflake UI. That's a web UI, and we'll have a quick walkthrough of the web UI to understand what all it offers to us. And then we will see how to load data and how to get data out from there into Tableau or any analytical application. Okay, let me bring up my Snowflake web UI. And the Snowflake account I'm going to use for this purpose, demo purpose, is hosted on AWS. All right. So as I said, Snowflake is available on AWS and Azure cloud both. So whoever is AWS heavy cloud implementation can go with Snowflake account on AWS, and otherwise it could be also be on Azure. So let me log in again. So the URL is going to be your Snowflake account, right? So like your organization name or any name of your account, and then snowflakecomputing.com. That would be the URL to log in. Okay. So now you can even find the URL like availability zone, like east-1.us and things like that. So Once you have your account purchased, you will get the URL like this, and then you will also get an account admin role, a specific user assigned to you. And once you log in with that, this is the screen where you sign in, right? You will have a Snowflake screen. Okay, so where we will find all the things what we just now discussed about the architecture, right? We have a database layer. Okay, we have a storage layer in database as database here, and then we have a warehouse tab which represents the virtual warehouse or a compute tier, which are EC2 instances or virtual warehouse, virtual instances of Microsoft. And we also have these interface as a whole, and also we have worksheets, we have history, and we have changing the users and roles and other things on the right hand side. So that means the UI and managing everything is a cloud service layer. So all the three layers are here. So we have a storage layer, which is S3 or a blobs, which is a database represented by database tab, and then a warehouse layer, warehouse tab, which is for query computing or executing the DML queries, and rest all the UI, which represents the cloud services layer, which allowed us to authenticate, and then it shows me all the content based on my role. So I can also see, if I click under my name by using switch role, I can also see a lot of roles in there, right? A lot of roles. So all these roles are to manage specific objects of Snowflake. So system admin is a DBA role who will have access to databases and virtual warehouses and other things. Then you have account admin who will have access to everything, anything and everything within our account. And a security admin is somebody who's going to create users and create roles and maintain user and role membership and any other custom roles based on our requirement, data requirement or a security requirement can be created by security admin or account admin, right? The best practice in Snowflake, create all the database related objects and virtual warehouses using sysadmin role, and create all the users and roles using security admin role. Okay, and account admin is to look at the billing information and what is the credit utilization and other things. So that is a super user, account admin. So it is not so much recommended to create anything using account admin, because if you create anything in account admin, then you have to explicitly grant permission to other downstream roles. So even sysadmin will not have access to anything created by account admin. So make sure that you create everything using sysadmin so that you don't have to depend on an account admin. Okay, that is about a bit of a security of Snowflake. Once we are in Snowflake, so we talked about the connectivity modes, right? We talked about ODBC, JDBC, and other things. So to get the clients to connect to Snowflake, you must have a login at the first place. The clients are not available for download on open internet. You cannot just search in Google and download them, but rather once you log in, click on help, then you have a download options here, right? You have a view documentation, view community, visit community, and download and show help panel, right? If you click on download, that's where you see the download area for downloading all the client softwares. So CLI, which is a SnowSQL, CLI is also called as SnowSQL. Okay, so this is a command line client to execute the SQL. Okay, you can download it for Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. All these are the available platforms, and you also have a JDBC. For JDBC, you need Java, JRE required, Java 7 and above required, and you can download a jar file from Maven repository and put it into a path file, and then you can use it with any of your favorite JDBC based IDEs like dbeaver or SQL Workbench or any such things which supports third-party JDBC connectivities, right? Then your ODBC, you can download ODBC driver from Snowflake repository. Okay, and it can be used for any of your ETL applications or Tableau connectivity or Power BI or any other analytical applications to connect it to Snowflake. And you have Python component for installation. You need Python 2.7 and above, right? And then you have to use pip install Snowflake connector for Python, and then you can start executing SQLs within your Python scripts. And Node.js driver the same, and then Spark connector for any kind of your big data kind of requirements or huge data set requirements. So these are set of client applications available for you to download, and you should have a login to download these clients. Okay, once we download the client and install it on our specific system, then you will be able to connect it from anywhere using any of these modes, right? So let us go ahead and look at what are the options available for our database and then the warehouse, right? And also a worksheet where you can execute any of your commands, okay, like SQL. Say for example, now me being a system administrator, I can go ahead and create a database by executing create database and database name, say test_db. Okay, so that is my query for creating a database, and I can run that query and the database gets created. You can see that the database created. If I go back to database tab, then I'll see the test_db, which is created now at 3:31 p.m. right? And that is owned by sysadmin, because me belonging to sysadmin role created that. So that means any object we create in Snowflake is owned by a role, not by a user, right? So that is a good part. So it is no more dependent on the user, rather it is owned by a role. So that is a good part, right? So now once I have a database created, I can go inside the database and I can create all these objects. These are all database objects. I can create a table. I can create the views once I have a tables, and once I know what kind of view, what kind of data I need in the view, I can go ahead and create the view. I can create the schemas. Schemas are nothing but the labels, right? Labels for any other database objects. Like you can have a single database, and then you can have all your line of businesses as schemas, right? Your HR is a schema, admin, sales as a schema, marketing as a schema. So schema is nothing but a label in Snowflake. And then we have staging, which is more of a location or storage location in Snowflake to stage or store your data files. Like if you have a CSV file, then those get stored in staging. Unlike if you look at existing data warehouses like Oracle, SQL Server, and Teradata and all, staging means a set of tables, intermediate tables between OLTP and actual data warehouse, right? That is not the case in Snowflake. Staging in Snowflake is just a storage location to store your files, data files in there, right? Then we have file formats, where using file format, you define what kind of data you are trying to load into Snowflake, whether it's a CSV file or it's a JSON file or it is any other files, right? Data files like Avro, Parquet, or any other file types, right? That's what you specify in file format. And finally, the sequence is for auto incrementing, or if you have a column in your table which needs to be auto incremented based on some logic, let's say every time +1, increment by 1, or increment by 10 or 100, by specifying what is the starting number. That is a sequence for us, right? These are the database objects. So let us go ahead and create a table. I can create a table using the UI itself, or I can also run my DDL script from some other data warehouse or some other database application. So if I want to create a table using the UI, I can click on create table, and then I can enter the table name. Say for example, store itself, right? And I am going to specify which schema it belongs to. Right now we have only public schema, but if I have multiple other schemas and if I have permission to use those schemas to create the objects, then I can select them. So schema, and then any comment, test table for webinar, right? Then I can start adding my columns. So when you say add column, it gives you a column name and it gives you a data type to be selected. So it supports lots of data types, right? And then you have also a constraint, not null constraint, if there is any default value to be filled in. So that is the one. So now let me say order column name as order ID, that is my column name, and keep the type of the column as data type as string, and I'm going to say it as not null because that is an ID column, and add one more column as order date, and I'm going to select data type for this as date and can be null, and another column as ship date. Okay, ship date, a simple table for tracking the order ID, order date, and ship date. So that is my table, and I will keep this name as order, right? Orders as a table name. Okay, so if I look at SQL, so now it shows me the SQL. There is in Snowflake, pretty much everywhere you will see this option to show SQL for anything you are trying to execute. So show SQL will show you the syntax of creating a table. So create table with all the other table name and column names and column data types and all other things with a comment, right? So finish, that will get me the table. Okay, now I have a table. Once you have a table or any other database objects, you can also control the permissions for specific custom roles. By default, sysadmin or whoever is owner of the database will have full permission to any of the objects within that database. If not, if you want to assign the permission to custom roles, then you could do that using orders, using this particular control grant privileges. Okay, so we have a table created now, and let us go ahead and create a stage file, right? Stage, and then upload one file there, and then we also create a file format and for a CSV file, because I want to load show loading the data which is in this format, right? So this is my sample CSV file which has 6 rows of data, and the first row is the column header, and remaining are my data files: order ID, order date, and ship date. So this is the sample data file which we are planning to push it into Snowflake, into the table which we just now created. So the way we do it is, because my data file has some validation to be done, because one of the data element has double quote and it also has a date column with slash separated by slash, right? Let's see how do we create a file format. Go to file format and create file format. Okay, put a name. I'm going to put CSV as a name, and then make it a schema. Right now we have only public. Then the type of the file is CSV. You can see all the supported file formats are available in the dropdown. So keep it as CSV. Then leave the compression method as auto, separation is comma, and then new line is new line, and then the header to skip is 1 because I have first row of the data is the column header. Then field optionally enclosed by double quotes because my data has double quote. Here you can see that there is a double quote. So otherwise my loading fails because Snowflake doesn't know how to handle double quote unless that is specified in the file format. I want to leave everything else the same, unchanged. And if you look at the show SQL, you will again find the SQL to execute, and then you can put that into your scripting also and do that. So finish would create me a file format. So now I have a file format. I have a table. Now if I want to load that from the UI itself, I can go ahead and click on a table and load data. That is the simplest way of loading data into Snowflake. So load data, that will bring up a option to load your data, but where it is asking me to select a warehouse, virtual warehouse, because this is a copy. This is a DML command. So far, we created a table, we created a database. It never asked for virtual warehouse or a compute tier. But when I'm trying to load data, it's asking for compute tier. Let us first look at what is that. So we can find all these warehouses in the warehouse tab, where we can go ahead and create a new warehouse, or we can use existing warehouse. If I want to create a new warehouse, I can create a warehouse by webinar VWH. That's the name of my warehouse. Then I can specify what is the t-shirt size of the warehouse. I'll keep it extra small. So if your query is very complex and a very heavy query, then you might want to change the t-shirt size of the warehouse. Let me keep it extra small. And it is for clustering purpose. So where you can have maximum of up to 10 nodes in a cluster and minimum of 1, right? So that means if you have a parallel queries running, enormous number of parallel queries running, then you can specify your cluster, right, maximum and minimum. Then Snowflake automatically ramps up to the maximum or whatever the required nodes based on the incoming queries, concurrency of the queries. Then once all those are executed, it will come back to the minimum cluster size. So that is the way this minimum and maximum works, and everything is automated. We don't have to deal with anything from the admin or user perspective. And then we have a scaling policy. So what is the way the scaling should happen? Like if you say standard, then it is it just looks for the query and then just scales it up. But if you say economy, then it looks for the query weight and all other related aspects and does your ramp up of the cluster, right? And then we have option to auto suspend. Say for example, if there is nothing running on your warehouse, so it can be suspended so that you don't incur cost. So in the UI, minimum available is 5, but from using a SQL, I can alter my warehouse to bring it up to say 1 minute or 30 seconds or anything like that. So you can see that auto suspend column in here. You can see some of my warehouses are 30 seconds. So that I did it using SQL. Okay. Then I have auto resume as well, where if there is any incoming query coming in, but my warehouse is suspended, you can see the status as suspended. So Snowflake automatically resumes that warehouse and runs your query. And after 5 minutes, if it is idle, then it is suspends as well. So that's how the virtual warehouse would work. So I created this webinar underscore VWH and finish. So that is created. So you can observe this. The warehouse is created with it started, right? The status is started now. So I'm good to use this warehouse for uploading my data now because it is in the start mode, and I also have auto resume on. Even if it suspends, it can still be started by your query. Okay. So again, coming back to load data and select the warehouse, the one which we just now created, webinar VWH. And next, it asks you a source file, and source file would be in, I can select it from my folder structure, webinar, Snowflake, examples, and then store.csv. This is the one. This is a file which now just now we saw in the Notepad++, Notepad, right? So that is a file I'm selecting. I can also take the file from my S3 bucket or Microsoft Blob and other things as well. I can do it from there as well. So source file is selected, and I need to select a file format for Snowflake to identify the incoming data and treat that accordingly. And once that is done, we have a loading option. So for our sake, I am just going to say continue loading for valid data. Otherwise, you have a lot of other options for rolling back and stopping and error handling and other things. It can be done too. And if you look at show SQL, it shows you that first step is to upload the data file, the CSV file, into Snowflake's temporary staging area, right? And then it is doing a copy command from this file into the table. So that is a sequence of operation which is going to happen now once we say okay. And these can also be executed from CLI or using Python or using Node.js or any other mode of connectivity. Okay. Then once you have selected everything, click on load. That will now upload the file, encrypt the file in the first place, and then upload it to the Snowflake staging, and then copy data into the table. So you can see that the file got processed, and we have 6 rows of data which are loaded. So 6 rows are loaded. You can also see that some bar graphs showing the number of rows and size of the file or size of the table, right? So that is the way you load the data from the UI perspective, right? You can also do the same thing from SnowSQL client or Python or anything else. So we can definitely do that. So once you load the data, we can go to worksheet. We have table testdb created. So I can use testdb. I can refresh to get my testdb listed in my list, public as a schema, and table as order. So I can do select star from this now. Okay, place name in the SQL. So I can say select star from, right? Just have to clean up the syntax. Okay, so okay, start from this table dot orders. I think I removed everything. Okay, control enter. So that should be giving me the data of 6 rows. Select from public orders. So we have 6 rows of data which is inserted by us using the UI, right? So now you can see that there are a lot of contexts here, like my role, the virtual warehouse which I'm using. It took a bit of time because this virtual warehouse, it was in the suspend state, so that's why it took a bit of a time. But if I execute it now, right, that comes up in fraction of seconds, so that will be much faster. Okay, we have all other database and schemas got selected in my view. Okay, so that is the simplest way of starting to use Snowflake. So the ways you get a Snowflake account, get a account admin access, start creating your users and roles within Snowflake, start creating your databases, and start creating your virtual warehouse with whatever the size you want. So normally we normally recommend to start slow, in the sense start virtual warehouses as an extra small and look at how that is being used. Okay, and based on the utilization and based on performance requirement, you can increase the size of the warehouse, or you can make it a cluster, any such things, right? So that is the recommended way. Now if you go to the history, you will see all sort of tables, all sort of history query execution on your account, right? Being a sysadmin, you can see all the executions, but being a restricted user, you can only see the queries executed by you and the role to which you belong to. Okay, so those are shown in the history part. So it normally maintains 14 days of history within the UI. But if you want to still see more of history from the day one, then you can go to information schema. If you go to database, if you go to views, then you will have so many views from the information schema. Okay, you have information schema which has lots of these read-only views where you can query your metadata information about Snowflake, right? About Snowflake account and usage based on your permission. You can go ahead and look into all these details. Okay. So apart from that, in Snowflake, you also, as we said, we can also load semi-structured data with respect to say JSON and things like that. We can also do that. Now, as a example, I will take one example of JSON file, loading JSON file. Let me create a table called JSON table, right? So I can create a table by name. I can go ahead and create table here by executing the script. Okay, create table. So let me do that in the same database. Okay, All right. So now the table is created where you can see the table name and a single column with variant as data type, which is a semi-structured data type. Once we have that, I can go back to the database and I need to create a file format for JSON. Create file format. Okay, JSON public, but I can select, I have to select from the drop down as JSON and leave everything as is and finish. And once I have it, I can go back to table and click on the table name, load data. I'm going to do it from the UI itself again. Okay, from the time perspective. So use webinar, next, source file as JSON sample.json, and next file format I need to select JSON and load all and load. So now if you look at the data, so this is what the data we are talking about in JSON. So this is some people data where we have IDs and where we have the picture of a person, then some part of the tags, and then we have some ranges, and we also have data about the person's friends, right? So this is the data we're talking about, and this has a 7 rows of data. So you can see that 7 rows are parsed and 7 rows are loaded. I can go ahead and query now on this table, right? And then we will be able to see, select star from the table, right? I can see that the data is 7 rows of data being displayed, right? So that's how we see the data. But now if you want to flatten that without having to do anything, right, you can execute a JSON friendly query to flatten that. And the way you do it is you got to write a SQL on the JSON table straight. We can execute this query. So this is nothing but flattening, selecting from this table and show it in a flattened structure. So you can see this now JSON data being flattened without me having to create a separate table or without having to load data by flattening it up. In Oracle or SQL Server or Teradata, we have to first flatten the data using some transformation or ETL application and then load the data. But here we can straight load the data and consume it, and the way we want to do it, we can do that. So let me take a pause here and see if there are any questions. Do we have any questions so far? Anybody can raise your hand and ask a question so that we can try to clarify them a bit on the topic so far we talked about. Jajati, you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered most part of it. I think if anybody has any questions, we can answer them. One piece which we did not talk about is data sharing. I think in the interest of time, I think we will not able to cover that. But if anybody have a question, we can clarify that.
Yep. So yeah, right. As Jajati highlighted, data sharing is in case if you are data provider or from whom you are buying data, they also have a Snowflake account. They can have the database in their account and share the data with you, so that you don't have to replicate or wait for their CSV files or data feeds, any such things. So that way, seamlessly, you will have data from your data providers. Or if you are selling a data to someone else, you could also do the same. So I mean, there is no prerequisite like they should have a account. You can also create them the read-only account and have it shared. So that those are also the options available. Okay, there is one question. What is the advantage of loading the data before transforming? Right. So if you apply transformation before loading, that means it's a row level operations, because every row you have to check and apply the transformations for each row. That means it becomes a row level operation. That becomes kind of an insert operation. Insert operation is always time consuming. If you have seen our data loading process in the earlier age, even now with Oracle, Teradata and things, using any of your ETL tool like Informatica, Data Stage or Ab initio and things like that. So that takes hours together to load data, right? So to speed it up, so you load the data first without applying any transformation, and then use the advanced capabilities of the database and the compute tier. You can apply your transformation in database, within database. So that makes it, say for example, just to give an example, if I have a 60 GB of data file of any format, right, I can load that file as is into Snowflake within 2 to 3 minutes, right? Depending on size of the node warehouse, I can load that in 2 to 3 minutes if I have a larger t-shirt size. So imagine loading 60 GB of file in 3 minutes into Snowflake database, right? And the same thing, if you start applying transformations and start loading, it could take 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours, even 5-6 hours, right? So that is the difference. Hope it answers the question. Okay. Okay. So the data cloning, right? Thanks for asking the question. Nice question there. So use of data cloning, right? So say for example, today you have a database called TestDB, right? So where you did all your development, and tomorrow you want to make that as a production DB, you can click on the database and do a cloning. So that will create a new database with everything in that database at that point of time. So the good part with data cloning is it is a metadata clone. It is not a physical clone. So the storage is not doubled. Storage is still the same. And anytime you make change in any of the database, the only delta gets stored, right? So that is always, if at all you want to take a backup of a database, or if you want to make a dev to prod to or UAT to prod like a release process, then cloning could be very useful feature of Snowflake, and it is very fast. So even if you have DBs of data, it does in few seconds because it's a metadata operation, not actually a DB operation. Hope that answered your question. Okay, the follow-up question on the transformation, I can see that the question is, okay, reporting will have to nevertheless clean up. Yes. So the transformation, so when we talk about ELT, we don't do a transformation while loading the data, but transformation will be applied within the database between objects. Say if you have two table or one table with everything in it, and then you can write the functions within Snowflake like user defined functions, and then apply all your transformations on that single table to build your star schema, right? That will be much faster. It can even be done in few minutes. That UDF can be run in few minutes to create star schema and load your data into that, and then use that as a source for your analytical purpose, like Tableau connectivity or Power BI connectivity. That can be used. Even you can apply your data masking technologies like hiding some of the personal identifiers or PI informations or any such things can also be done there. Data masking and any such things can be done there using user defined functions or Python scripts. Cool. Thank you. So any further questions? We have last 1 minute left in this webinar. Do we have any questions on anything so far we talked about? Cool. So if no further questions, right? So let us go over to the contact detail. So if anyone wants to have some follow-up or any questions or comments about this webinar, please feel free to reach out to these email IDs or the phone number. So we'll be more than happy to answer your questions in the later point of time if anybody has any question. So this would be our contact details for future requirements or contacts. Nick, you want to say anything? Jajati, Nick,
Yeah,
anyone else?
feel free to raise your question through the email Raj provided here, and you can take a note of it. And we are happy to get back to you as soon as possible.
All right. All right. Thanks for joining the webinar. It was great talking to the group, and looking forward to get some questions around these lines and help you build your data piece effectively. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Rajesh. Bye.
Thank you.